Wolsey served above all the king. Wolsey was a consummate politician. It's difficult for us these days to it's kind of unusual that you'd find a cardinal of the church as what effectively was the prime minister of the country. But in those days there was no separation between church and state, and they were intricately bound up with each other. And he, while at the same time being a very successful man of the cloth, he was also the great politician of his age, really. He was like a chess player, except it's a very critical game of chess where if you make the wrong move, it's death. If you make the right move, it's glory. But he served above all the king. He loved the king, and the king loved him. And but finally, as happened very often in the reign of Henry VIII, things started to go awry. Well, what we're addressing at this point is the young Henry, who was a young and vigorous guy. He was considerably older than the king and had been around for a long time. Was very worldly, and More was always very close to the king. They were good friends. He was also a very intelligent man who shared similar political views to the king himself, who was influenced by all kinds of new thought that was beginning to percolate through Europe. Wolsey was much more of a pragmatist than that, but of course Thomas More followed Wolsey as the next great chancellor. It was an age of great chancellors. There wasn't much in the way of democracy in those days, and you know, that sort of interrelationship. I'm a firm believer that you've got to take religion out of politics. It gets very, very messy. We see it all around us today, and a lot of the mess of that time was to do with that kind of that interrelationship between politics and religion. Never a good idea. I think the king and Wolsey were close. There's no question about that, for a long, long time. And Wolsey did have a kind of father figure function in Henry's life, as well as being an extremely astute politician. He knew which way the king should jump at every possible moment. And but of course, friendship in those days, particularly between the king and his loyal subjects, was at best tenuous.